Well, welcome to another episode of the Grace Podcast. I'm really excited for this one because I'm joined by Anne Slatter, who is the GM of iCare, and we're really excited to have you here today. So thank you for giving us your time. And we'd love to just know a little bit about you, your background, what you do, what iCare is all about, for those who haven't heard of it. And so over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having us. I'm Anne. I'm a mom of two boys. They're pretty old now. If they hear me say that, they'll be horrified. But anyway, and Craig and Luke. And I came from more of a bookkeeping background before I entered the NGO field. I worked at a school for a couple of years as their bursar, and then got taken into iCare as their accountant, and then GM after a few years. Sure. And I've done that for quite a number of years now. And I've always had a voluntary background working for St. John Ambulance for years and years and years, and training first aid teams. So that's
You needed first aid for your two boys growing up, eh?
I certainly did for my younger one, yes.
I've also got two boys, also Luke, and one of them is also Luke.
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely for my younger one, I needed first aid in a big way, yeah.
Okay, and what does iCare do? I mean, I'm aware of the organization. How old is the organization?
Well, that's what I was just going to tell you. We were birthed in 2002, so we're 20 years old this year. We're having a big birthday, big celebrations, and just amazed at the fact that we've got through 20 years and still going so strong. And so we've got lots to celebrate.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so, iCare was birthed in, 2002 by Graham Cochrane, the late Graham Cochrane, who saw the plight of street children, driving onto the Bria every day, lots of kids at traffic lights, and saw them for who they really are. They're marginalized, they're broken little souls, because nobody at that young age of maybe between 9 and 15 chooses to live on the streets or chooses to be at traffic lights.
Sure.
And street children are classified by living and working on the streets. You get part-timers, and a lot of people complain about the part-timers because they come in the school holidays and just drive motorists mad, by running through the traffic. But the children who actually live and work on the streets are the street children that we mainly work with.
Sure.
In the city of Durban and greater Durban, Pinetown, Hillcrest, Phoenix, and the Intezuma, the Ink area, Intezuma, KwaMashu, and Ananda areas, yeah.
Sure. And so I know, you obviously have a huge passion for this. What is the sort of primary work that you actually do with the street children?
So what we always tell people when they ask like this is that we rehabilitate street children. So we don't necessarily rehabilitate them from drugs as people see rehabilitation. We rehabilitate them from the life of the streets. It's a no rules kind of life. They get involved in many, scary and different things on the streets. They are quite abused on the streets by older kids and older people as well. They are expected to perhaps even pay for where they want to sleep, even if it's a street corner or a shop doorway. Or a park area, they'll almost get charged in different ways to live there. And so we rehabilitate these children from the streets. We meet them at their place of need on the streets. And our outreach workers are truly, they're angels. They work with the kids on the streets, finding out who they are, why they are, where they are. Yeah. And we have a drop-in center that then they eventually bring them into once that sort of relationship of trust has been formed. They bring them into our drop-in centre, which we have in Windermere, the Windermere area, and Churchill Road, and from there we start our interventions into their lives.
Sure.
Trying to find out who their families are, where they've come from, why they're on the streets, what brought them to the streets, what is the family dynamic, and we eventually then start to try and find that family, be guided home by these young kids. And then we really can draw the true picture. We have some really strange pictures to start off with. We may have strange names and strange areas that they come from, and then we finally really just get into their lives and why they've chosen to be on the streets.
Sure. It's amazing work. So, just even as you're listening, I'm sure you kind of moved by just the challenge of that, because it really is a huge challenge.
It is.
And obviously every child is different and has different set of circumstances. So would you say that there are like key factors or key sort of patterns that you see in why children end up in the streets? Obviously, from a biblical perspective, we speak about, the widow, the orphan, the poor. We speak about the vulnerable being a voice for the vulnerable. I mean, these are probably the most vulnerable of vulnerable.
Yes, they
you know,
are.
you're a child and you're living
Yes.
at the mercy of you know.
Yes.
So what are there some patterns that you see? Or?
Yes, definitely. We sort of have a bit of a list of, you know, why did you come to the streets? And the biggest is poverty and abuse. And I mean, poverty, just because of our economic situation in our country, and the unemployment is huge. But the abuse is not necessarily being hit by the big stick at home, but it's a child not receiving their basic needs is suffering from abuse. So if you're not loved, if you're not sheltered, if you're not educated, if you're not medicated, if you're not given nutrition, that child is suffering from a form of abuse. And so a lot of these kids come to the streets looking for something better, just to escape some of what they're not getting, believing that they can sometimes come to the streets to make a living for mom or granny, and then take it back. But very rarely does it get taken back, because whatever they earn, they're using. And then as they've lived on the streets a little bit longer, so they use it for all the wrong things. They start to get involved in drugs and drug taking. And some of it's severe, and you know, from the heroin point of view, but then otherwise it's glue sniffing, smoking weed, you know, taking tablets, mixing up Sparletta drinks, you know, with all sorts of stuff in it. Just being so vulnerable to all that on the streets, and very trapped. Yes. So what may have started as a fairly good intention of like, I can really help home a little bit by taking something back, that doesn't often happen. So that's where our catch net goes out, and we need to start working with that child, and very holistically. Yeah. Yes.
And how do you, I mean, is there, and obviously you've got social workers, you've got a team of people that are I mean, is there a connection with government? Is there a connection with, how does that work?
Yes, so we're quite independent with our outreach program. The city has funded us for some years a while back, but you know, they've obviously allocated funding to other areas since COVID as well. But social development does step in once we've actually taken that child into our care. So we have child and youth care centres that we work with the children, you know, sort of ongoing in the child and youth care centres, and they actually come to live with us. So once they've been through our outreach program, our drop-in centre program, psychosocial intervention by our social workers, they then go through our under 18, if they're under 18, they go through our under 18 Kutaza program. Kutaza means encouraging new life.
Sure. And
we have a facility down in Malagasy, just off Duneside, and they live with us there for 3 months while they go through this restoration. So restore, renew, rebuild the child, spiritually, physically.
Yeah.
And once we've worked with them for those 3 months, all that while we're doing family intervention, family reunification, family restoration programs. And then at the end of those 3 months, we can make that decision to either place them in our CYCC, Child and Youth Care Centres, or they can be reunified with family. And it's at that point that social development will come into the picture and either place them with us formally on court order into our Child and Youth Care Centres, or then we place them on our aftercare program if they go home.
Sure.
So that we can watch them, we can keep some touch with them. And if they fall back to the streets, you know, we practice just unconditional love that only Jesus can give. And so we try and just live by his word and live by that love that he's given us. And so unconditionally we fall and we get up and we're given the second chance and a third chance. And that's what we do with these children. We don't write them off at all. We just keep going. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And that's probably the greatest gift, even more than
absolutely.
You know, I mean, I think there's, you know, Maslow's hierarchy, and you obviously have to look after the base needs. But I think something that's very clear is that, you know, poverty is more than just our physical needs. Absolutely. It's emotional, as you said. It's spiritual. It's all of that. And to have, I imagine, to see really good results, you have to look at the child as a whole being. Yes. So you speak of your own Christian values. I mean, do those values sort of permeate the organization?
Well, absolutely. We are a Christian organization. We have, you know, Jesus is right at our center. I often say to the staff, you know, you've got to walk around Jesus through here. You know, we can't just take a straight road through iCare. You've got to go around Jesus first, or through him, or with him, and take him with him. So we definitely we have a very deep love for the Lord, and it's evident in all our staff. And we always talk about the impact, and if we don't make an impact, have we made a difference? And so to make that impact, we have to have that right heart, and we've got to have that right spirit, and we've got to have that right passion for broken children.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this is a long, this is not a quick fix situation. You know? So in order to keep your courage and your faith and not become hopeless or despondent, you need that. I mean, I've been reading a book around sort of church history and what made the church, grow and expand. And really what it was is they loved, they cared, they served, they washed feet, and we take for granted, we see it as self-evident now that, a child has worth and value and therefore needs to be cared for, but that wasn't always self-evident in society. In Jesus' time, in the Roman times, they talk about exposure. If you had a girl, well, just expose it, or it was literally, and that was seen to them as being self-evident. And it was only followers of Christ and followers of the way that actually said, no, wait a minute, we're created in the image of God. We have infinite value. That's every person. And they essentially began the first orphanages, the first child. So, you're part of a long history and heritage of the church being salt and light in the very, very dark places of our city. So I want to say, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone watching. Well done for you guys and the incredible work you guys do. And I know it's tireless and thankless, but we are cheering you on. And that's kind of what I want to kind of shift towards is how, what is the relationship with Grace? How did you end up here? What's our relationship? And what would you say, how can we as members of Grace Family Church, how can we make a difference? How can we be part of this? What does that look like? Or what do you want everyone to kind of know?
Okay, so just Grace Aid and Container Ministries and everything that goes with your church, we've benefited hugely. I mean, sort of to feed the numbers that we fed as well, and to clothe them, and just to even get that support, and knowing that an organisation such as Grace is there. I mean, recently we've even enrolled our kids into your sewing group and the Life program. Hope I'm getting that right. The Life program that just supports us in moving those children through, and like we were saying earlier about teaching them to fish and giving him the rod. So the sewing classes, and then perhaps a sewing machine will move him on. It's an empowerment, and so we've attended courses here as well, and our staff have attended courses, and we've been part of the market days, and just opportunities to work together with like-minded people, and just know that there's amazing support out there that we can so rely on. And the buckets and the food buckets that come annually. I mean, what a blessing to be able to give those to our aftercare children when they come to fetch their next year's school uniforms. They go home with their mom or their gogo, whoever their care giver is. They go home with a bucket of goodies and a new pair of shoes and a school uniform for the next year, and equipped with the right stationery that goes with it, and just ready for the next year, and just feeling loved.
That's huge.
They really do feel loved.
That's huge. And what would you want us to know? I know you mentioned some of the things, we're big on when helping hurts.
Yes.
And sometimes we want to help, but sometimes the way in which we help actually ends up hurting. So talk to us about that.
I'd just love to say to everybody out there that your heart goes out to those children when you see them at a traffic light. You want to give them just something that you feel may make them better for the day, whether it be an apple or a sandwich or some money, and money being the worst thing. But, they're at the traffic light because they know that they're going to get something from the public by standing there and hoping it's going to be some money. And if it's not money and it's a sandwich or a burger, that just helps them have that little bit of extra money in their pockets then to go and buy those drugs at the end of the day or pay for where they're staying. And it just exacerbates the whole thing about them being at the traffic lights. It's keeping them on the streets one day longer. It's perhaps keeping them away from wanting to come with our outreach worker to the drop-in centre on that particular day, because maybe a Friday is quite lucrative, or during school holidays or a long weekend is lucrative. So we're really not doing them a favour by giving them anything at the traffic lights. Make the traffic lights a fairly unpleasant place to be. Like we're all grumpy at the traffic lights. We don't want to look left nor right. Maybe we should all just do that. And people would go and seek the right help at the right places, and not think that the traffic light or the beachfront is the place to be.
It seems counterintuitive in some ways, because
it is.
You want to help and
Yes.
Yes. Walk past you don't want to be the person walking past the Good Samaritan on the side of the road.
Exactly.
I mean, but as you say, if it perpetuates that system,
does.
then you're part of that.
Yeah.
So what would you, if you have any tips for us who can, how we can help, what we can do,
Okay, so well, iCare thrives on donations. Unfortunately, that's where we are. We don't have any real sustainable programs that we can run, because we don't have a touch point with our children for long enough to have vegetable gardens. Well, we do. We have internal vegetable gardens and chicken projects and that sort of thing, but we don't have a business side to iCare. So we're always relying on non-perishable foods to feed the families out there, and internally use within our CYCCs as well, and clothing and school uniforms and gently used sports equipment. Our boys are football mad, and to buy these hundreds of pairs of soccer boots is actually quite a daunting task. And so we just say to kids out there, if you've got a pair of soccer boots and you haven't used them or you've outgrown them,
brilliant,
tie the laces together and send them to us.
Wow.
We'll use them. We'll love them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we could keep going, but thank you so much for just
Thank
being with us
you.
and sharing your heart
Yeah.
and the incredible work you guys are doing. And for those who call Grace home, thank you guys, because in many ways you are actually already part of iCare, as
Definitely.
you are using your time, your talent, and your treasure to sow into our church or to tithe to our church or give. Then a lot of those resources end up
Yes.
benefiting organizations like iCare and many others that are doing other important work in different parts of our city and nation.
Absolutely.
So you are involved, and
Yes.
and know that it is making a difference on the
certainly is.
streets, in places that need it most. So
Yeah.
thank you guys for what you do. Thank you
Pleasure.
for what you do.
Thank you so much.
And
Yeah.
thanks for joining us for the podcast.
Thank you.